Hi, Kara. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
Thanks for joining.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Could you just give us a little bit of your background and like why you chose to do your PhD?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was originally on a pre-med track. So all through undergrad, everything that I had done was to prepare for medical school. And I have a lot of friends and family that are in that space. So I didn't know a whole lot about PhD programs. So after graduating, I took a couple gap years and I was working in medicine. And kind of decided, maybe it wasn't for me. So rather than applying to medical school, I was kind of exploring PhD programs and trying to learn a little bit more, and was never sure, what would be the right time for me because, like I said, everything I had done up until that point was to prepare for medical school. So I had research experience a little bit, but I never felt like it was enough. I started, volunteering in a research lab and then actually started my PhD applications before even like working full time in research. So,
Okay.
a little bit different path.
Okay, I have more questions because like I think this is super common. Everyone's like, I don't have enough X. A lot of times it is research experience. So when you started to apply, how much research experience did you have?
I had 2 years during undergrad,
Okay.
but it was during undergrad. I didn't have, one specific project in that lab that I was working on. I know some undergrads can be super productive in labs during undergrad, and I didn't really feel like I had enough experience. It was in a neuroscience lab, and I'm applying for molecular and cellular biology PhD program. So it was kind of in line with that. And then in April of 2023, I started volunteering in a lab at the local university here while also working full time. So I was volunteering about 10 hours per week. And again, at that point, I didn't have a set project that I was working on. I was just kind of helping out here and there. So again, I didn't feel super qualified.
Okay. Did you have any publications or anything like that?
I had a clinical publication. So it was a case study that I had worked on with some physicians, but nothing in basic research.
Everything you're telling me is like, my head goes, yes, very well qualified. But I get to your point is like, looking around to other people or like there's always some other, I guess, perfect scenario where you would have done certain things. But okay,
Mhm.
but you did have great experience and you built that. And I like how you said you were getting more research experience like as you were like doing the application process. So I think sometimes people feel like, okay, I can't start until I have like everything buttoned up. But I think you did a good job of keeping a lot of balls in the air. How did that work for you?
Yeah, so I actually, in November, so PhD applications were due in November. And at the very beginning of November, I had been on this track of looking for a full-time research technician position, but they're super hard to come by. And so the lab I was volunteering in, actually, the PI there is the one who helped me. And I was, talking to him and I was like, I don't know if I should apply yet or just wait. Like, you know how much experience. He was like, just do it. Like, why would you waste a whole nother year? Just do it. So I did. But in that time period, I did start as a research technician in the beginning of November. And I honestly think that seriously helped me a lot because in my application and then during interviews too, I was able to speak on that full time experience. And it also solidified for me too that this is what I want to do because it's hard. For me, at least, it felt like it was hard to really gauge that that's what I wanted to do without having that 40-hour week. These are my projects I'm working on. I'm like fully in charge of this
Mhm.
and seeing all aspects of it.
Okay.
So I really think it's never too late to start those research positions either, because I really in my head thought like, okay, I need to be in this full-time job for a year in order to apply. Like that's kind of crazy. But talking to him and then what I learned in your program, like I realized like, no, I can do this at the same time and it's totally fine. And then by the time interviews came around, I felt like I had enough to speak on.
I love that. It's almost like don't take your foot off the gas. You're going in that direction, just keep going. And
Mm-hmm.
that's amazing. Okay, well, more questions. So before you started working with us, like what was your frustration like? Like what kind of drove you to work with us?
Yeah, so I think a big part of it was that confidence of like, am I ready for this? The PhD application process is super unique. And like I said, I had a lot of exposure to the medical school application process, but the PhD application process is a whole different ballgame. What's on those applications and like on like the websites is like this much, but the amount of like bases you need to cover is like this much. And that's not necessarily just saying like the amount of experience you need to have, but things like research, reaching out to professors, just the different things like that that I didn't know was part of the process. I didn't have a good handle on what was involved in the process. And therefore, I didn't feel ready to jump in and do it.
It's kind of like the nebulous unknowns. And it's like, yeah, everyone says, like jump, but you're like, I will jump when I know what I'm jumping into. And you felt like you weren't even quite sure. So, well, that's impressive because like you still did jump. Like you still were like, okay, I'm gonna do it. Like I might as well, I guess, get support and like not waste a whole nother year.
I really wanted to do it once, and even if I didn't get in, know that I had done everything I could and covered all my bases. And so I didn't want to turn in an application and not know if I was like doing everything and then spend a whole nother year, because it is a lot of work and it is discouraging. If I want to make sure, like when I hit submit, that I know I did everything I possibly could. And that's how I felt this year when I hit submit. I was like, if I don't get in, it's because I genuinely didn't have enough, and I will try again next year. But I know that I did everything I could, and that's what the program helped me to do.
That's a good feeling. That's such a good feeling.
Yeah.
Because you're right, there's like no guarantees, and like, the universe is crazy. They were connecting really well with the faculty, and then that faculty ended up not taking students, and then like, they feel like, oh no, it's just, or that faculty goes on sabbatical. Like we just can't control things, but you're right, you can control like how well you prepare. What part in the program did you start to be like, oh, this is working for me? Like, could you share more?
When I was reaching out to professors and getting those responses back and having good conversations with professors at different schools, and some schools where I was like, there's no way, like I don't stand a chance, right? And so like having those conversations, I feel like this could actually happen. So that's when I really felt like it was starting to work.
That's awesome. You had to do a lot of work. Every applicant has to do a lot of work to get up to that point. It's just like, oh, it just fell into your lap, all the things.
And that's something that at the very beginning of the program, I was kind of struggling because I felt like I didn't have the exact research question that I wanted to study. And like, there's like 10 different things that I'm super interested in. So I was like, how do I like narrow this down? And these people are in very different spaces. Like, how do I choose? And I was like, okay, maybe I'm not ready like at first. And then I had actually talked with you and you were like, no, like just jump in and it'll be okay. And it totally was. Just because you chat with a professor doesn't mean you're committing to their lab. Like you don't have to overthink it and just do it. And then like the commitment comes later.
Yeah, like be in data collection and like just get as much information as you can so you can make better decisions. I love that. Okay. Yeah. What was like your favorite part of the program?
The worksheets that you created were super helpful, but I did like the group calls too. Not just the group calls, but also the like Slack. Like I was Slack and asked questions in front of all these people, but that actually was like one of the greatest advantage because I saw people in the Slack asking questions.
You're just like tapping into, the hive mind, right? There's a lot more that ground is going to be covered, right? Because they have different experiences and different thoughts. And then, but to your point, they're still super like valuable. Yeah, I love it. I love the group. And like, yeah, that's why I kind of think that people can like, it's like, and I hear your point. Like the group is super, super supportive. So did you feel like you could ask whatever you wanted?
Yeah, I definitely did. Like everyone was super supportive and kind of like all over the place of their backgrounds. And some people had applied before, some people hadn't. And like no one was like judgmental or anything. Like everyone was super accepting and on this journey together.
A newer person joined and me and you were like chatting about your outfit selections for interviews, and she like DM'd me and was like, I thought that was so cool how like you had this space where people feel comfortable to talk about their like clothes.
Oh, that's so funny.
I know, I didn't think anything of it. I was just like, this is just like normal and good. But yeah, I thought that was cool. How did the like writing process go for you? How did that work for you?
It was good. All that work that I did up front of like researching the programs and the professors and everything like helped so much with the writing process. Like I think if I had started the writing process before doing that, I would feel super lost, and I definitely would have had to rewrite the whole thing, right? Because it's geared towards that space, the programs, like types of programs I was applying to in that process. So I think all of that upfront work helped a lot. But it was also kind of fun, honestly, to like kind of like tell your story. And like everyone has a unique story, right? Like everyone's coming from a unique place and like their different experience built up to this point. So it's kind of fun to like write that. Like, of course it's challenging, of course it's a lot of work, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
That's kind of how I designed it. It would be a lot harder if you didn't do those initial steps. And like the frustrating thing is those initial steps are like non-tangible. It's a little bit frustrating in that regard, but it makes the other part super easy. I mean, easier, right? A lot more easier to do. Okay. And oh, what was like the interview process like for you? Like, did you on campus, virtual? Like, how did that go?
Yeah, so I had two on-campus interviews. I applied to 5 schools and I had two interviews, and they were both on campus, both super fun. I definitely felt like I over prepared for them and stressed out about them more than I needed to, which is definitely better than the opposite. It was like kind of a recruitment couple days, so it was really relaxed and casual conversations with the professors. So like I had like researched them and like come in like I'm ready. After the interviews were over, it was just really fun getting to know everyone and see like the campus and the other applicants and like the other grad students and just like gauging like their like if they were happy or not and things like that that you can't get from a website. So it was a really good experience. Like I really had a lot of fun with it.
Oh, that's awesome. Cool. I love that. Yeah, I find them fun too. I hope that all the work we've done makes you guys be able to like be present. You know, if your brain is divided between like stress, anxiety, and like trying to be present, it's just not as much fun. So you got to have a lot more fun.
Right. And I think it was a healthy amount of like stress. I only know the ones I care about and then like be
Okay.
right. Like so it was definitely a good balance.
Yes, like you want to use that nervous energy. You don't want it to control you. You want to use it.
Exactly.
Talk to me about, and then they get interviews with Professor Y. Could you share a little bit about that and how that worked for you?
In the application and then also like after I got the interview, they had me rank like the people that I wanted to work with. And one school had me rank 10 people. And so I was like, oh my gosh, now I have to go research all these people. And then I was paired with two that I was interested in and two that I wasn't or didn't know anything about. And it was actually the same at both schools. And I know some people in the interview cohort, they didn't get anyone that they were interested in. So it just really boils down to who's available. One school released the interview schedule 2 days before, and I was like in the process of moving, and it was an out-of-state interview. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm just sitting at the airport like studying. And it was a completely different space than what I'm interested in. One was on like parasites, and I'm more interested in like metabolism. So it was just very different. So I was a couple questions to ask them about their research and then get a general overview of what they're studying. So, because I was like, there's no way I'm going to actually understand this, right? Like, this is way too much to grasp. So that's what I did. It did come in handy. Like, I over prepared, but I was able to ask them those simple questions that showed that I was interested in and that I studied it. So that was good. And then one of them was a physicist who, it was like computational things that I had no experience in, but it was still a really good conversation. And he knew that going into it. He was actually like asking me questions about like, you know, what do you think are the challenging parts of the PhD program and like giving me advice on entering it. So I definitely still feel like I got something out of these interviews. Like it was still really important. It is an interview. So it had that component to it.
Did you end up getting, like, we had the interview, and then did you end up matching with a faculty that you felt was a good fit, or did you end up matching with like the parasite person or something?
So both of the schools that I interviewed at are actually on the rotation system. So they're both 3 rotations. So I won't match until after the first year.
That's nice. It's a little bit less pressure.
Yeah, definitely.
What was the most surprising thing that you learned about yourself through this process?
I would never have guessed that I would have gotten interviews at the schools that I got interviews at. So I guess that was really surprising to me, but also like something that you kind of carry forward. Okay, I can do these hard things. And like, if I like do the work and put in the effort, like I can make it happen. So that like was really surprising.
The next 4 years, you're going to have, you know, ups and downs and challenges. Carrying that through will serve you well. Where did you end up interviewing? Where did you end up selecting your offer?
Yeah, so I interviewed at UC Santa Barbara and UCLA. And actually, prior to interviews, I thought UCLA was my #1 choice. Like on paper, it looked great, but I had never been to either of those cities before. I honestly really, really loved UC Santa Barbara. And it felt right. And it's like, I feel like it's like 90% vibes at that point. Both schools are great. I've been accepted to UC Santa Barbara. UCLA hasn't released their decisions yet. But I'm really leaning towards Santa Barbara.
Congratulations. How does it
Thank
feel
you.
like you're on the other side?
Yeah, it feels so good. It honestly like doesn't really feel real yet, especially like that I'm gonna be moving out of state and like I've never moved out of state before. So it's just like I'm still processing. Like I found out like I think a week and a half ago, but it feels like so much pressure off and like all that hard work paid off.
Yeah.
So, and now like looking back, I'm like, wow, that process was kind of fun, even though during it I was like not having a good time.
Yeah, it is fun because you're gaining all these skills, all this knowledge, like you're learning more about the space you're about to enter. Most of you guys are really busy, so you're juggling it with full-time jobs or changing jobs or family or friends or like travel. You have other parts of your life. Would you recommend the Fearless Grad program to others? And if so, why?
Yeah, I would absolutely recommend it. The PhD process, application process is so complicated, and there's like so much that isn't set up front when you're just Googling PhD applications. And so having that guidance of here's what you should expect. And of course, every project, every program is very different, but still like there's these general underlying things that help you really prepare. And so if I hadn't done the Fearless Grad program, I really feel like not only would I have not have known all the things to do, but I wouldn't have had that confidence of, okay, these are the bases I need to cover. This is how much of what I have done I need to put forward, which was pretty much all of it. And that's not what I was expecting. Having that guidance really, really helped me and gave me not only the knowledge and skills, but also the confidence to apply.
I love it. A lot of times, like people aren't clear of the target, want to get in, but to your point, like they don't know the bar of certain things. And so sometimes they're going to like overstress in some areas and kind of neglect other. And we just need to work through that and be more like, effective, right? So that way you don't spin your wheels and that way you can hit what you need without crashing and burning, basically.
During any process, like application process, of course, those like random questions are going to come up. And like to your point of spinning your wheels, like you might sit there and be like, oh my gosh, how do I phrase this email? Blah, blah, blah. So to be able to just pop it in the Slack and then get your feedback was so helpful to like avoid spending so much energy on these unnecessary parts or, making sure that I'm doing things correctly.
Yay, I love that. We want to save you time and energy so you can protect that and use that where you need to. Anything else you want to share for others starting the PhD process?
I would say just jump in with 2 feet and follow everything. Like if you're starting the Fearless Grad program, follow everything that Natalie says. But also like if you're feeling really stuck on one part, say something because it's way better to like speak up and ask the question than waste all that energy spinning your wheels on one topic. So definitely don't be afraid to ask the questions. But also I would say apply to the schools that you don't think you can get into, because if it's what you want and you really put everything into it, like you have a chance just like everyone else does.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you so much.